Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to another session of Ask Dr. Saleem. As the name of the series implies, this is a Q&A session with Dr. Saleem where you can ask your questions in English or Urdu, your preference of language, but the answers will be given in English so that we can reach a wider array of audience.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad. Dr.
Walaikum
Shehzad,
assalam.
I saw the whole coronation ceremony of Prince Charles today. And in the whole ceremony, they kept saying, in belief in God, our Lord. And I did not hear them mention anything about Jesus Christ, the Son of God. So what confused me is that when we hear about Trinity in their beliefs, and they're saying Jesus, Son of God, can they mean that we all say, we are all children of God? Because throughout the, I think, 2.5 hour ceremony, everything was make our Lord, the God, protect you, guide you. So I got a little confused because I thought the Church of England believed in Trinity and it was Jesus Christ they emphasized on. But today, I didn't see anything in this ceremony which suggested that. So aren't they monotheists? Yes, even the Quran said the Ahle Kitab, they don't do shirk. So how could you shed some light on this confusion in me?
So actually, as I have been discussing this in other sessions, absolutely correct. The Christians and the Jews, both they are monotheists. Trinity, although it's not recognized by the Quran, however, the Quran actually has said that because the Christians themselves say that their own concept of Trinity is in line with monotheism, the Quran would not agree with it, but it has taken their word for it, and therefore it accepts them as monotheistic religious followers. And as far as the ceremony is concerned, I mean, as I said, I mean, it's not essential that the name of Christ be taken here because they believe in one God. And the way that they believe in one God is that He has three Godheads, so to speak, the Son, the Father, and the Holy Ghost, which is, of course, excuse me, which are the three, I would say, parts of that Trinity. And that Trinity, or a Trinitarian triangle, as I can say, is actually based on the belief that there is one single God. So Trinity is something which is not found in the Bible, I can say, per se. It is something which was authored, I would say, by St. Paul. And the Christianity that we today see, the Roman Christianity, I would say, is what we can call as the Pauline Christianity, because St. Paul is the originator of most of the concepts of today's Christianity. The Bible doesn't contain anything which can, I mean, there are verses which they justify to interpret and say that, well, look here, this is how Godhead is mentioned, but there is no explicit verse in the Bible. Having said that, I think that an absence of mention of Jesus Christ should not be taken as the fact that they don't regard Him to be part of the Godhead, which is Trinity. It's only just a matter of fact that they are mentioning God, who is, of course, one to them. And Christ Himself has said that believe in one God and love Him with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. So, I mean, it should not be any cause of confusion that they don't believe Christ to be God's Son. Yes, they do so. Whether it's the Church of England, whether it's the Roman Church, whether it's the Orthodox Church, whether it's the Trinitarian Church, whether it's the Eastern Orthodox Church, all of them, the common factor in them, except for one, and they are the Unitarians. And the name itself shows that they are Unitarians and they are not Trinitarians. So a very small minority called the Unitarians, they believe in one God, which is purely one God, but all the rest, they believe in Trinity. But there should not be any cause of confusion that if they don't take Jesus' name in that ceremony, I mean, it's still there in their minds.
Dr. Shah, they said something that may Jesus Christ guide us. Like we say in different religion, may the prophet guide us, may we follow his guidance. So I wasn't very sure whether is this something wrong they are doing, the shirk. I just got the feeling that they were very monotheist and they just believed in the one God. Yeah, that was.
They are. I mean, this is the true essence of monotheism. But as I said, this is some deviant form of monotheism in which they have these three Godheads, as they say, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. So these three triads, I would say, or triumvirates, they make up Godhead, as they would call it. So when they say Jesus, may Jesus guide them, I mean, they think that they are at times in direct communion with Him. And although this is different from the Church of England, but the Roman Church, for example, the papacy or the popes, for them, it is said that they are in direct communication with Jesus, and they receive direct inspiration from Him.
Dr. Sir, when they go to church, then they pray to God. They don't pray to Jesus
I know that.
Christ.
Yeah, of course,
So,
that's
yeah.
what they say.
Yeah,
That is correct.
that at least some confusion has gone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Baran Nashur. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Sir, my question is, me and my parents, we have a dog inside our house living, and I have heard from certain people that if you have a dog in your house, your prayer is not accepted because it's not pure. And I'm trying to keep my my prayer mat away, but it's like sometimes he walks over the prayer mat. But we do keep the dog clean, if you know what I mean. So I'm wondering, what is are my prayers accepted? Is it like sinful what we are doing? Because my parents are like more of modern type people, and they don't see any problem with the dog. And I also still love the dog, actually. So it's like kind of difficult situation for myself.
Right. I think your parents are absolutely correct in their view. There is absolutely no problem in keeping a dog as long as you have hygienically trained it, which most people do when they keep a pet inside. There is no difference between a cat or a dog or any other domesticated pet which you can hygienically train. So if he has been properly trained and he is wandering about within your rooms, or he's there and he has his own place, it's absolutely fine. There is a very, very deep misunderstanding regarding keeping of dogs in Islam, in the beliefs of most Muslims, and that has arisen because of certain narratives of the Prophet which are absolutely different in their import. As far as the Quran is concerned, the Quran has actually said that when you let loose a dog on a prey, a trained dog, he can go and catch that prey if you say Bismillah Allahu Akbar, which is the takbir, and the prey which will be caught by the dog, of course he would be tearing it apart through his incisors, is regarded to be absolutely fine by the Almighty. So had his saliva been impure, this was the best place for the Quran to say that, well, you cannot do so. So I think as Muslims we are guilty of oppressing dogs in our culture, and this is specifically because of not understanding certain narratives. And if you'd like to study those narratives, we can refer you to certain sources which you can and you can see for yourself that all these narratives have a very specific implication and a very specific meaning, and they do not refer in any way to the fact that dogs are impure or that you cannot keep them in your houses. In fact, there is no difference between a dog and a cat as far as keeping them in your house is concerned. A person can be, she or she could be more careful by washing the clothes, or maybe the part where the dog is rubbing himself on, or maybe licking his master. But as I said, this is something which is a personal preference. As far as the saliva of the dog is concerned, as far as his skin is concerned, if it touches your body or if it touches your clothes, it does not make them impure in any way.
Okay, yeah, I would very much like to see those things so I can show maybe other people as well, because I am like, they are making me terrified that everything I do is nullified because we have a dog in our house. They say like the angels don't come, or your rewards will be.
So I can refer you to I think I have talked on this subject in detail, the hadith as well. There is a series which I if I'm remembering it correctly, there were six lectures or 6 sessions which related to Islam for youngsters or something like that. It was given to a Canadian audience. I think it was a couple of years ago, I think Mariam will help you. So one of the topics that we discussed was these dogs, and we also discussed all the related narratives. So if you can just see that, and hopefully Mariam will send you the link, then you'll be able to see it for yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. This has given me much relief right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'll be posting the link shortly in the chat, so keep an eye out for that. Huzaifa, you're up next. Please go ahead.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम डॉक्टर साहब मेरा आपसे ये सवाल है कि सूरह निसा की 34वीं नंबर आयत है उसमें अल्फाज इस्तेमाल हुए वज़रिब हुन्ना, तो इसका मैंने तीन लोगों का वज़रिबू हुन्ना माजरत, तो इसमें लोगों के तीनों के तर्जुमे देखें। डॉक्टर इसरार अमीन इस्लाही मौलाना मौजूद है, अगर किसी को मेरी वजह से ठेस पहुंची तो मैं बड़ा सख्त माजरत खाऊं, और तो इन सब ने इसका तर्जुमा यही किया कि औरत को मारना चाहिए। वो कुछ कहते हैं कि इस तरह मारे की कोई निशान है कि इस तरह बड़ी इसकी इंटरप्रिटेशन की जाती है, और बाकी भी फिर बाकी फिरकों वालों ने भी ये इसकी तर्जुमा की है। जबकि सूरह निसा की 101 नंबर आयत देखे तो वहां पर वो वज़रिबतुम है, तो वहां पर इसका तर्जुमा है कि वहां से सफर कर जाओ। इसमें तो कोई गलत बात नहीं है कि जब भी मर्द ने गुस्से में फैसला किया तो गलत किया है, मगर एक और भी इश्काल पैदा होता है कि अगर उस आयत में देखें तो उस आयत में वो नाम आता है अल रिजाल का और अल निसा का, तो उसमें तो कहीं मियाँ बीवी का जिक्र नहीं है। और क्या इसका मतलब ये नहीं हो सकता कि इन जो गलत अल रिजाल और जो लोग हिदायत पे नहीं है अल रिजाल और अल निसा, इन लोगों को हिदायत दो, क्योंकि मैं गलत ना हो तो किसी कुरान में किसी जगह इसकी जगह हिदायत का भी मतलब इस्तेमाल हुआ, अगर मैं गलत हूँ मेरी तस्दीक कर दें। जज़ाकल्लाह।
So as far as this Surah Nisa verse is concerned, it needs some explanation, and I'll try to make it short. First of all, you have to understand that the word zaraba, whenever it is used in a way that the object or the maf'ul is a human being, then it can only mean to hit someone. There are other usages. For example, you refer to the fact وَإِذَا زَرَبْتُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ, which means that when you walk on the earth. So in that case, it is a totally different construction, and in such cases, of course, it will be interpreted to mean when you walk on the earth. However, whenever the maf'ul, as I would say, or the object of the verb is a human being, then it has to be in this meaning. Zarabtum fil ard, of course, has the same instance as well, in which you have a human being as the maf'ul, but then the addition of fil ard, actually it tells us that here there is an entirely different construction that we are dealing with here. So this is the first thing that you have to understand, that we cannot change the meaning. There are various usages of the word zaraba, and if you look up a dictionary, you'll find them. But as I said, whenever it is used with the maf'ul in this manner, well, for example, when it is said zarabahu, it can only mean that to hit someone. Secondly, this is an option, it's not an obligation. And as far as this option is concerned, it is to be utilized and employed only when a husband thinks that, well, it can deter a divorce. Remember, this is a last-ditch effort to prevent the family from breaking up. So this is an option which is given, and I have also referred this in several of my talks, that in many rural societies, in many feudal societies, this was a deterrent. And even today, I'm not talking about urban societies, like, for example, the societies that we live in. But still we have the rural societies, we have feudal societies in which this could be a deterrent. And so therefore, if a person sagaciously and wisely uses this option, it can work. And the other thing that has to be understood is that it's just an option, it's not an obligation. And there are certain steps which lead to this. And the first step is that you need to give advice to your wife, and this advice has to be in the face of the fact that she has taken up this position of rebellion, that she says that, well, I'm not going to accept your authority. Anything less than that will not invoke this action. And that action, as I said, is divided into 3 steps. So if she rebels, or she says that I'm not going to accept the final authority of the husband, which of course the Quran says, then the Quran says that you can counsel her, and if that doesn't work, then you can leave her to herself and sever any marital relations with her. And if this doesn't work, then of course you have this option. But as I said, this is an option. And lastly, you see, when you study the Quran, you have to know the diction of the Quran. It does not always speak in the terms of husband and wife, but the context readily suggests it. And there are terms in the Quran which also, when used in this way, can only mean that they are referring to husband and wife. For example, when I say the woman at your home, or the woman, when I say your woman, I'm just using the phrase your woman, but it can only mean your wife. So you see, it's like a insinuation which is made. On a very similar note, what it is said, "Ar-rijalu qawwamuna 'ala an-nisa," although the word man and woman is used, or men and women are the words that are used, but the context tells us that here men imply husbands and women imply wives. So this is a very common diction of the Quran, and as I said, it's not just restricted to the Quran. Even we use the word woman and man in a way that they imply husband and wife.
डॉक्टर साहब, फिर अगर देखें, अगर एक मर्द है वो अपनी बीवी के हकूक पूरे नहीं कर रहा, फिर भी वो दूसरी शादी करना चाह रहे हैं, तो फिर क्या उसको, जो फिर तो कुरान की एक वो भी है, मेरा हाफ़िज़ इतना कभी नहीं है तो मुझे ये चीज़ें याद नहीं रहती कि बीवियों का भी मर्दों पे उतना हकूक है कि जितना उनका उस पर, मुझे वो आयत पूरी याद नहीं है। तो फिर बीवी को भी तो मर्द को मारना चाहिए कि वो अपनी पहली बीवी का तो हकूक नहीं पूरे कर रहा कि वो उसको करे, अगर वो नहीं मार।
You see, this is a difference that you have to understand. You see, punishment is something which is liable for both when they are not fulfilling their rights. If the wife is liable for punishment, the husband is also liable for punishment. But the nature of this punishment is different. Let me give you an example from our everyday life. For example, if a policeman sees a violation from a citizen, what will he do? Of course, he'll give him a ticket or challan him. But what if the citizen sees the policeman doing something wrong? So he cannot reverse challan him or reverse give him a ticket. I mean, this is not possible. So you see, there is a method to everything. People who are given authority, they are questioned in a different way, and people who are made subservient to certain authorities, they are questioned in a different way. So precisely on these grounds, if a husband is being unruly, if he is being unreasonable, if he is, for example, abusing the wife or misusing his authority, then he will be called, he can be called by the court, and a justice system can inflict any punishment on him. So it's just a question of making us understand that there is a decorum in every system. When the chief executive is to be fined, there is a different way to do that. And when people who are working in an organization are to be penalized, then there is a different system. So as I said, it's not that people who are in authority, they will be allowed to go scot-free. No, they will be also questioned, and they will be punished also and taken to task, but the nature of this would be different. So this is how things proceed in religion as well.
Okay, shukriya.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. There is a written question. It says, we know historically that mutah was practiced before and during early Islamic era. Do we have any proof of it being banned except through akhbar ahad? Quran does talk about mithaq ghaliz, from contract to establish the institution of marriage, but did it abrogate mutah anywhere? And they'd also like to know if it is an undignified practice, who is it undignified for men, women, or for society overall, and how?
You see, in the very earlier part of the Quran, which of course the Meccan surahs, they have prohibited any extramarital relations, and the Quran has said in Surah Mu'minun, which is the 23rd surah, and Surah Ma'arij, which is the 70th surah, the words are that they cannot have any extramarital relations except with their wives. So, muta is something which is an extramarital relation, and the woman with whom you conduct this is called a mamtu'a, as against the nikah institution, in which when the two get married, the woman is called a mankuha. So mankuha and mamtu'a are two different terms, and muta is something which is not recognized by Islam, by the Quran in any way. So as far as sexual relations are concerned, it clearly says that illa ala azwajihim aw ma malakat aymanuhum, that they are only possible between the husband and wife. And in those times there was one other option as well, and that was with slave women, because for that for a particular period of time, and a very temporary period of time, slavery was given protection because it was gradually eradicated. And in that time of gradual eradication, it was of course regarded to be allowed. But once the gradual process was completed at a particular instance, it was totally outlawed in the Quran, and so therefore that head has already finished. So the only possible legitimate relations remain which remain in the Quran are between husband and wife, and they of course entail rights and obligations, and it's like a proper contract. It's a contract for life. But in the case of muta, it's neither. I mean, you neither have any obligations nor is it a permanent contract. It's like a temporary marriage, and it's more of a marriage for satisfying one's sexual urge, and there's nothing else involved in it. There are no responsibilities, no obligations involved, and it's just something which has evolved, and it was there in the times of the Quran, before the Quran, and the Quran at a very earlier instance, as I said, in the Meccan surahs, regarded it to be outlawed. So you don't need a akhbar ahad. So I mean, the questioner said that there are no akhbar ahad or there are akhbar ahad. I'm not talking about hadith or akhbar ahad. I'm talking about the Quran.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Our next question comes from Rafia Khwaja. Please go ahead.
Dr. Shehzad, I wanted your opinion. I've been following a very tragic story of a religious cult following in Kenya, where a pastor persuaded his church members, women and children, to starve themselves to death, saying this would enable them to meet Jesus Christ. 100 women, men, and children have been discovered dead, and they are discovering more bodies. The pastor has been arrested. Now, in Pakistan also, a lot of our uneducated, Jahil people go to peers, and sometimes one hear of horrendous things they are asked to do. My question is, was their faith so strong that they actually believed that by killing themselves they would meet Jesus Christ? Or did this evil pastor have such a strong hold on their mind that he convinced them to kill themselves? Can people
both.
actually do?
Yes. You see, this is something which is a question of belief, and of course the pastor, who is now behind bars, he was successful in convincing them that yes, this is what their fate would be. And you should not be surprised, because this is something which you'll find amongst Muslims as well. When they are said and they are told that as soon as they kill non-Muslims, they'll be given 70 maidens in paradise, so they do so. I mean, there's something which makes them blow up themselves and kill people, and and because of the fact that they think that they are promised paradise, and not only paradise but maidens in paradise. So this goes for them as well. So it's basically brainwashing which is done by religious people, and religious people of all cults, of all religions. They do this, and because of the fact that there is this overbearing effect of this persuasion, that people who have weak psyche, who get influenced by ideas, they take to it. So you can just see the example of suicide bombers in amongst Muslims, how convinced they are, and how they are. They are so. They think that by blowing themselves up, which is by any means not an easy thing, but they get ready and they get prepared to kill themselves for this cause. So you can see that this is a weakness which human beings in general have all over the world. I can talk about other cults as well, in amongst the Japanese, amongst the Chinese. So this is something which has existed in every religion and every cult. So that is precisely why the Quran stresses that you must use your intellect. You must not blindly follow people what they say. You see, one of the biggest contributions of the Quran is that it actually addresses the mind. Look at so many verses in the Quran which says that afala yatadabbaruna al-Quran, or it says wama yazakkaru illa ulul albab. Only men of understanding, only people who use their intellect are going to succeed or are going to understand the faith. And in fact, there is one place in the Quran in which the companions of hell, they have said that law kunna nasma'u aw naqilu ma kunna fi ashabi sa'ir. Had we listened intently and used our intellect, we would not have ended up in hell. So you see, this is such a fundamental thing, that instead of being brainwashed, you must think rationally. You must think your concepts in a way that you are able to justify them on the grounds of reasoning. And this is one of the biggest contributions of the Quran, and not only the Quran, I would say other divine scriptures as well.
So Dr. Shehzad, actually killing the children, young little kids, and they thought they'll reach Jesus Christ. Are they normal?
Yes,
or is this just something?
I mean, as I said, this is brainwashing. This is what brainwashing does.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Our next question comes from Baran Nashur. Please go ahead.
Sir, I had another question relating to our relation to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because in our religion we see our Prophet as the best of the prophets that have ever come, and we believe that he will intercede for us on the day of judgment. But I have come across a few verses in the Quran. For example, in Surah Baqarah, the verse 285, it says, "We make no distinction between the prophets." Or
right.
Another verse that says, "There will be no intercession on the day of judgment. That there no soul will intercede for another soul." So I'm like, honestly kind of confused what the reality is. Will our prophet actually intercede for us, for example, and is he like the best of prophets, or like are we supposed to make no difference between any prophet and that we are on our own on the day of judgment?
Right. So you see, this is one of the fundamental concepts which has been taught to us in the Quran. It says, "La nufarriqu bayna ahadim min rasulihi," that we do not differentiate between any of God's messengers, which means that all of them deserve equal respect. And this concept of the best prophet is not found anywhere in the Quran. In fact, there is no authentic narrative also which says so. So this is actually one of the things that has misled a lot of people, and they think that the Prophet or Prophet Muhammad is the best prophet. Let me also refer you to a conversation between Prophet Muhammad and one of his companions when he called him the best prophet. And you know what the Prophet himself replied? He said, "Zaka Ibrahim." If you want to know from me who is the best prophet, then he is our forefather Abraham. And on another occasion, he said that one of the most honorable prophets is Prophet Joseph. So you see, the Prophet himself never ever in any way corroborated this practice or condoned this practice. So we have to be in this position that we give equal respect to all prophets of God. We have to believe in all prophets of God. The only distinction between the rest of the prophets and Prophet Muhammad is that we are, because he's the last prophet and he has brought the latest edition of God's guidance, so we are bound to follow him or the guidance brought by him. So to follow the guidance brought by him is something else, and giving respect to all prophets of God equally, that is a given. As far as the question of intercession is concerned, as you have said, the words that you have read in the Quran probably are فِيهِ لَا بَيْءٌ خُلَّةٌ وَلَا شِفَاعَةٌ, that there would be no intercession on the day of judgment and there would be no friendship. So that actually refers to the fact that there is no one who is going to save you except your own deeds. As far as the intercession of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is concerned, it is something of an entirely different genre, I would say. And that is that if you look at the Quran, it says that his intercession or the intercession of the prophets is basically something which is like something which is seconds. It is like a support given to a person who has first asked for forgiveness. So this, if you study in the Quran, you'll find that there are people who are clearly sinners. For them the Prophet can do nothing because they have earned it. And then there would be people who would be like 50-50. They would be on the borders, and most probably God's mercy would have already forgiven them. But it's like giving an honor to a prophet of God and saying, well, what do you think? Would you like me to forgive such people? So it is on such occasions that the intercession of Prophet Muhammad would prevail, which means that people who are on the borderline, which in other words means that they have equal number of good and bad deeds. And it's just a question of showing tilt. And as you would see from the Quran, if matters are even Stevens, then most probably God's mercy would give concession and would forgive them. But to give honor to the prophets, instead of God Almighty pronouncing this verdict himself, he would ask Prophet Muhammad, well, what about you? What would you say? Should we forgive such people who have equal number of good and bad deeds? And of course the Prophet would say yes. So this is where intercession of the Prophet Muhammad comes into play. It doesn't mean that a person who is a sinner who deserves to go to hell, he is going to be saved by Prophet Muhammad in any way. That would be against God's justice, and that's not going to happen. And if you look at the Quran, you'll find that all these verses say that whatever this intercession, whenever it will take place, it will be about the person whom the Almighty chooses. Yeah, for example, the Almighty will say, well, about such and such a person, what do you say? I mean, asking the Prophet. And then whatever would be said would not be against justice. So if you look at all these conditions, then you'll find that people who are on the borderline are actually being talked about. The confusion has been actually created by, again, certain narratives which speak like a across the board intercession for all sinners. It's like a free immunity given to them. That is not correct. So we have to look at all these narratives in the light of the Quran. And if you look at these narratives in the light of the Quran, intercession is just an act of kindness shown by Prophet Muhammad to people who would already, by all intents and purposes, would have been forgiven by the Almighty, because they have equal number of good and bad deeds. And to honor the word of a prophet of God, he would be asked that what do you think? And of course, like God's own mercy, the merciful prophet would also say, yes, please forgive them. This is what intercession is all about in the Quran.
All right, and also because I hear a lot that because we should love our prophet, and of course we love and respect our prophet, but sometimes I have the feeling that it's kind of exaggerated, in the sense that like I'm questioning if it leads to a kind form of worship or shirk, because for example, I heard that people want to make dua through Prophet Muhammad, that they will make the dua to God, even though he already passed away a long time ago. I don't know if this is correct, for example. I have many doubts about that. And also because, for example, they say if you give a lot of salawat on the Friday, like that's the best thing you can do on Friday, for example. So I'm wondering, is this also incorrect then? Because it feels like a form of worship at that point.
Well, first of all, making dua is something, the tool or the means that we have been taught in the Quran is that you have to ask God directly. You don't need the means of any prophet or any saint or any pious person. God says, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمُ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. When people call me, I am there to answer them. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي أَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. When people ask me, I am very close to them. So the etiquette that we have been taught is to directly pray and invoke God's mercy and to ask from Him. And as far as sending salawat is concerned, which of course I think you're referring to durood, or the prayer for the Prophet himself, that is something which was, and in the times of the Prophet himself, was taught to Muslims, because the hypocrites amongst them, they would censure the Prophet, they would harass him, they would tease him, sometimes openly, sometimes covertly. So in order to show the Prophet and in order to dispense with these evil things or these connivances, Muslims were told that you, instead of following suit, you should pray for the Prophet and you should invoke God's mercy for him. And this is what we call durood. And this was Muslims were actually obligated, and it was made mandatory upon them. And today also we can follow suit, but remember, this is primarily something which was said as in response to the connivances of the hypocrites in the times of Prophet of God. So if you read durood, remember you're always reading durood when you're offering the salah. You see, every salah has Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin, Allahumma barik. This is the durood that we do in every prayer. And when we read the complete name of the Prophet, for example, when you say Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so sallallahu alaihi wasallam is also a durood. So it's not just that you have to say it specially. You just need to realize that you do it punctually and quite consistently every day when you pray the salah and whenever you pronounce the name of the Prophet in full. I mean, what do you say? What are the words that you use on Friday?
Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, something like that.
Is it done in congregation, or you do it personally, or what is this? What is the form?
Personally, it's like,
yes, fine. It's like a dua that you're doing for the Prophet. So always remember that this is your expression of fondness for Prophet Muhammad.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, but it's because it's like, maybe it's like unintentional falling into shirk, for example. That's my fear. That's why I was asking about it.
I mean, when you're saying these words, always remember that you are praying for a prophet of God. You're not, doing any shirk, or it's nothing polytheistic because you're not associating him with God. I mean, it's a prayer. It's a prayer in which you are asking for the Almighty to bless the prophet. When you say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, it means, oh Lord, send your blessings to Muhammad. Be kind to him. So this is a prayer, and it doesn't in any way constitute shirk.
All right, that's a very big relief. Thank you very much. That answered my question.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Bisma Tirmizi Ahmed. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saleem. My question is regarding the prayer. From what I understood last time, the obligatory part of the prayer is Allah Akbar. When we say Alhamdulillah, then we add the Quran part, and then Sami Allahu liman hamida, and then saying the salam. The rest of the stuff
Right.
seems to be optional from what I remember correctly. Now, the gentleman just asked you about the drood. We've been saying it until last week when I asked you the question, I was saying it 17 times a day. Every time before I said my salam, if it's optional and we replace it with just dua for, the way we say it after namaz, for our children, for our family, for the world, for peace, for health, is that wrong? And teaching the children now moving forward, because since I found out last week, it's become very easy for me to tell my children to say their prayers, because it's made it so much shorter. Is it wrong to remove that practice? Because the rest of the Muslims are doing it. They are saying the durood, they are saying at-tahiyyat, they are saying Rabbana Atina, or whatever form of prayer they want to when they're sitting down. What is your opinion? Because if we change that and we tell our children now moving forward that is just optional, then does that create some kind of
No, actually, you see, it is optional. If it had been mandatory, we would have been told that it is mandatory. The very incident in which at-tahiyyat or the durood was actually made part of the namaz, you'll see that the way it was it's taught, on the way the conversation took place between the Prophet and one of his companions, it clearly shows that this is something which the Prophet taught as an optional thing. So, I mean, you can just tell your children and to yourself as well that this is one of the options you can use. You can mix and match, as they say. Sometimes you can write the durood, offer the durood. Sometimes you don't do so. But the thing that you need to be clear about is that it is not a mandatory thing. It's not part of the prayer. It is an optional thing, and if you feel like doing it, do it. Do it sometimes, leave it at other times, and it's not going to affect the validity of your prayer.
Okay. And then where is it? What part? I do not know the history. What part is it where the Prophet told the Sahaba? Is there some kind of a written a book or something?
Yes, there was a conversation. Yes, of course, there are hadith narratives. And I think, this was between Abdullah ibn Masud and the Prophet himself. And he was saying, Allahu salam, Allahu salam. And the Prophet said, well, why do you say Allahu salam? Because he is an embodiment of peace. Instead of saying Allahu salam, you say these words, At-tahiyyatu lillahi wa salawatu. So it was the Prophet teaching him, telling him that if you have to pray for God, then you don't pray for him the way we pray for the rest of humanity, but you actually thank him in a way that you expressed your emotions for him. So the way he taught it, and you'll find it in hadith books, it becomes very clear that he was just telling a sahabi or a companion that if you have to speak about God, it should be something like this. And the nature, as you would say, would make itself clear that it was something of an option which was given to it, to that companion. It was not, it was something which took place between one companion, the Prophet himself. Had it been something of an obligation, he would have announced it to all the companions and to all the people. It was just a personal conversation through which we came to know that these were the words that were taught, and that too to just one companion.
So basically, even when we go in the ruku and the sajda, we can just pray for whatever we want to?
Whatever we want to, yes, in any language.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Noshad Shafkat, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sab. Dr. Sab, there was a partial lunar eclipse yesterday, and there are some people who put up a janamaz and put up a candle and switched off all the lights and started praying there. I as much as I could, just pointed it out to them that this is not the way you can offer your namaz during this time. You can offer the optional namaz that we
Right.
pray. What would you say about that? About what should be done during this? Because burning of candles, that reminded me of traditions coming from other religions. Thank you.
So there is absolutely no concept of burning of candles or turning off lights or uh, praying in total pitch darkness. This is something which is, I would say, a man-made invention or some cultural practice, or maybe an infiltration from other cultures and religions. That as far as the Prophet himself is concerned, he did offer this prayer. It's called the prayer of kusuf, or the prayer of eclipse, and he did so in his own times. And so it's like a big matter happening in the universe, and the Prophet invoking God's mercy and his blessings and his and glorifying him that something is happening. It's a manifestation of God's majesty, his power, his splendor. So this is how the Prophet responded when he saw this. And I think the simple optional prayer that we offer as a nafil it suffices. As far as other things are concerned, they have absolutely no authentic basis.
We have a question in chat from Azim Sarfraz, who asks, is it permissible to have a marriage without having any physical relationship with mutual agreement? Not that they're sexually disabled, but it's just that they don't feel attracted to each other after having spent 12 rough years they've had together with 3 daughters. The only thing that's keeping them together is their kids.
I mean, yes, I mean, on the face of it, there's nothing that can be objected to. I mean, if they have had 3 daughters, then at least on 3 occasions they were successful. Other than that, if they don't keep any marital contact, it's their choice. And if it is only because of the children that they are together, that's again a choice. So it's not essential if it's on the basis of mutual agreement. Obviously, this is an abnormality, it's an anomaly, I would say. But if both agree to it, and I mean, there could be psychological reasons, there could be various other reasons, I could say. So any legitimate reason which makes them realize that this is something that they would not be I mean, doing so in spite of the fact that one of the reasons to come together in the bond of marriage is that you satisfy each other's psychological and sexual urges. I mean, this is one of the basics of marriage. So if one is not doing so, he or she must be having some pretty strong legitimate excuse. If and that is the case, I don't see any problem.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Walaikum assalam.
सर मेरा सवाल था वो जो बीवी के ऊपर हाथ उठाने का कुरान के अंदर एक आयत है उसके ऊपर जिक्र हुआ है सर मैंने गांधी साहब के इसके ऊपर सुना हुआ है वो कहते हैं कि फैमिली एक इंस्टीट्यूशन की तरह है और मर्द उसका सरबराह होता है और बीवी को सरकशी नहीं करनी चाहिए उसके बावजूद सर एक कॉन्ट्रैक्ट खत्म करने का मर्द के पास राइट हो वो तो समझ में आता है कि मर्द जब चाहे वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट खत्म कर दे और फैमिली को और जो बीवी है वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट खत्म करने के लिए मर्द के पास आती है और वो इसके लिए डिमांड करती है कि आई वांट टू गेट सेपरेटेड लेकिन सर हाथ उठाने की चीज तो ये तो बिल्कुल समझ में नहीं आती क्योंकि एक इंसान की हैसियत से ये कौन डिसाइड करेगा कि मर्द बीवी सरकश हो रही है या नहीं हो रही मर्द को या कोई डिवाइन उसको इल्हाम होता है इस बात का कि ये बीवी सरकश हो रही है ये अथॉरिटी उसको कैसे खुदा दे सकते हैं क्योंकि वो भी एक इंसान है और बीवी भी एक इंसान है बीवी के ऊपर ये जुल्म नहीं होता सर कि एक इंसान है उसके पास कोई ऐसी डिवाइन अथॉरिटी नहीं है वो सिर्फ अपने जो लिमिटेड सोच उसके अंदर रहते हुए वो किसी के ऊपर हाथ उठाने पे आ जाए थैंक यू सर
So, okay, see, you have to understand this that I mean, living in an urban culture, living in cities, living in societies that we are living in, it becomes absolutely, I mean, it's looked like something which is against justice that if you raise your hand against your wife, for that matter, even punishing your children or maybe punishing them in the classroom, that too is slowly becoming against the norms. So remember that when we are living in a certain culture, we become so used to that culture and to its norms that when we see something which is against it, we tend to dislike it or we think that it is against justice. I was discussing this earlier on as well. So, and I would refer you once again to that discussion, and maybe you can also listen to some detailed talks which I have given on this topic. That remember, first of all, that this is an option which is given, and that too, if you look at certain non-urban societies, like for example rural societies, like for example certain feudal societies, this was a last-ditch effort to save the marriage from breaking up. So one of the biggest things which the Quran has as an objective before it is to stop a family from breaking. So the most important thing for the Quran is that not to let the family break in any way, and not the children, if they have children, go in a way that they are not attended by and they don't have the father and the mother to look after them, and they'll start living as single parent families. So this is the biggest question which the Quran has, and it goes as far as allowing the husband to take this step. So if you just reverse the situation, and you think that this is injustice, instead of thinking it to be injustice, think that if this could be a measure which can stop the family from breaking up, so why wouldn't it be adopted? Because remember, a family is a building block of a society, and if you are able to protect a family, if you can make one single child benefit from a mother and a father at the same time, it's a huge service that you would do. So this is a preservation, I would say, a preservation program suggested by the Quran. And again, as I said, this is to be used in a very judicious way. If husbands start misusing them, they could be called to account, they could be punished, in a very far worse way than they did inflict that. And the Prophet himself has taught that this should be, this measure should be like the measure of a teacher correcting a child. And he has used the word zarban ghayra mubarrihin, that whatever strike that you do, the way you strike your wife, it should not leave any sign on her body, which signifies the fact that the Prophet is telling the husband that if this situation arises, if it does arise, and you think that this can save the family from breaking up, and even then, if you do so, be gentle with your wife, and this should not be something which creates a permanent mark on her skin. So you see, this is like realizing the fact that there is a greater good which this measure needed, which this measure meant itself for accomplishment. So a greater good was to preserve the family. And finally, as I said, I think I've said this repeatedly earlier on as well, that this is not a mandatory advice, it's just an option, and that option of course is to be used by the husband. And when he starts to see that there is this rebelliousness arising in his wife, and she's not accepting the authority of the husband, and she's after the breakup of the family, then she should do that. Again, there could be wrong, I would say, use of authority. This could be a bad judgment that he has made. But if he has done it out of sincerity, it is hoped that it might work. And if you see, if it doesn't work, then the family is going to break up anyway. For example, if the wife is going to break up and she's going to seek a divorce, so whether you are going to beat her or not, that divorce is going to happen if she's bent upon it. So this is like a last ditch effort. And as I said, that please come out of the urban society that we are living in. We are living in a society in which we just cannot think of this to happen, and I think we should not use this option in a urban society that we are living in today, because it is not acceptable generally. But think of the fact that let me please complete that the Quran is meant for all times to come. It's not just for an urban society. It's meant for a feudal society, for a rural society, for all types of societies. All that it says is that the husband must use this option wisely, and he is not to use it on all accounts. He should use it only when he thinks that it can save the marriage from breaking up. And even then, if he does so, it has to be only and only in the circumstance that the first two steps have been followed, and the issue at hand is not any altercation with the wife, but the fact that she is rising against the husband's authority and she's rebelling against the system of the family. So I think there are so many restrictions which are imposed on this, that if we understand it in its proper perspective, that it is basically meant to preserve the family. It is meant to preserve the breakage of a family, and something which is like something that we would not accept, that we would not swallow, but we are being made to swallow it for a greater good. That I think that we can understand that how compassionate the Almighty is because we are viewing it from the angle of injustice and the wife being injured, and the Almighty is viewing it from another side, and that is to preserve the family.
Sir, for the method, like आपने जैसे बोला कि preservation method है, वो तो अगर डिवाइन लॉ है तो उसके लिए तो सर तस्लीम खाम, लेकिन सर जो मेथड है मुझे इतराज़ थोड़ा सा इस वजह से हो रहा था क्योंकि ये एक इंसान को अथॉरिटी दे रहे खुदा के मेथड को तो हम चैलेंज नहीं कर सकते कि खुदा अगर ये अथॉरिटी अगर वाइफ को भी दे देता, वो भी प्रिजर्व करने के लिए ऐसी कोई कर सकती तो देन इट वुड हैव मेक सेंस। और सर एक और चीज़ मैं आपसे पूछना चाहता हूँ, क्या ये वक्ती तदबीर है, मतलब ये एक स्पेसिफिक टाइम के लिए या फिर ये हमेशा के आने वाले वक्तों के लिए?
I mean, you have to understand. I mean, the Quran is for all times to come. It is something which is meant for all times. The only thing is that you have to be wise enough to understand when the situation invokes the usage of this condition or this option. And as I said, that remember that this is something. If it had been given to the wife as well, it would have caused chaos. Because you see, authority is to be checked in another way, and people who are subjected to an authority, if they violate that authority, it has to be checked in another way. I just gave this example earlier on today when someone asked that why isn't the wife given this authority? And I said, look at what we do in our own lives. When a police constable sees the citizen or citizen doing some violation, he gives that person a ticket or challans him, isn't that so? But when the citizen sees the policeman or the constable doing something wrong, he cannot challan him reverse, because there is a method to it. What he'll do is he'll report the constable to the authorities and tell the authorities that, well, the person that you appointed for this purpose is doing something wrong. So, I mean, this is what we do as well. The way we treat authority and the way we hold authority to be accountable is always different. So the Almighty has not done anything differently. A husband is given authority. It's not that he has an absolute authority. If he misuses that authority, he'll be checked for that. But I mean, just as we don't allow citizens to challan constables, in a similar way, it would cause chaos if we give the same authority to the wife as well. One person has to be given that option, and that is the person who has authority. However, that doesn't mean that the person who has authority can make hay and do anything. If he misuses that authority, then he will be punished for that, he will be penalized for that. The only thing is that the method for this penalization, the method for this penalty, the method for this punishment would be different.
Sir, my final question that I have for today is about sometimes we have good intentions to do a good deed, but sometimes we make mistakes, we have our own faults, and those good intentions might lead to some bad results. For example, you might give some charity to someone who uses it to buy drugs or alcohol or something. How are we judged for such occasions, like when we intend for something good but something negative ends up as a result?
That's not your responsibility. You see, if you're doing a charitable act, if you're helping someone and that person is misusing the charity that you give that person, I mean, that he is liable for that. As far as you are concerned, you are just helping him out in his needs, but he is misusing the money that you gave him. So you're not responsible for any wrong thing he does, unless, of course, you are fully aware. For example, you know that a person is in the influence of drugs, and if you give him the money, he's just going to buy more drugs. So unless you're fully clear about what the person will do, in that case, you should abstain from giving charity. And I mean, there are still other methods in which you can help such a person as well. But in normal circumstances, when you see a person who is in need, obviously you can go to a certain extent to verify his circumstances and his situation, and if you're reasonably satisfied, it's fine. But if in spite of that the person misuses the charity, then he is liable for that. You're not liable.
Yes, and in that specific case, for example, if you are deceived by, they say one thing and they do the other thing, you are aware that that is a possibility, like they might use it for something bad, but I'm not sure if they will or not. What would then be the best option, to just go with the safe option or take the risk?
I think it's all dependent on the situation. At times you see that the need is so much that you find that, well, maybe if I help that person, the need that he has, for example, in paying his bills, because in spite of being a person who's using drugs or misusing the money that you give him, he still has his needs. So it's like a decision that you have to make considering many variables, and in the best of the interest of the person, with all sincerity, you can take a decision. And if it goes wrong, hopefully, inshallah, God will not take you to task.
Yeah, because sometimes we also have we have to make a decision and we are not certain if we what the right or wrong decision is, and then we still intend to make the decision as good as possible, but because we are unsure.
That's what is required. That do your best practice, do whatever you can to verify and vet the person, and then just you just cannot be perfect enough to find out what a person is actually from inside. You just need to. It's something which is beyond us. So you have to be reasonably in a position to judge the fact that yes, the person is in need.
Yes, exactly. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem, for another session of Q&A with you. Inshallah, we'll see you again in the first Saturday of next month for this series.